Welcome to Writing the Wrong Way. We talk about how writing works, how writers work, and how the best writers risk being strange. And I've got some writers and artists in here with me today, and some fellow collaborators on our new and current Kickstarter happening now. Go to deadwork.ca and check out Dead Work, an anthology of comics by your favorite indie creators, being these guys here. So let me just have everyone introduce themselves and say a little bit about who you are. Let's start with you, Zach.
I'm Zach Schuster, ZM Schuster online. I've been working on some comics for this book and other books, like Thread is my big comic that I did a full-length one, and there's a new little Thread story in this book, which I'm excited about. But yeah, Thread and is a little Norse mythology adventure, and I've got some D&D kind of inspired little stories, character origins of interesting characters. And yeah, that's what I put in the book, and I'm really excited how it's all shaping up.
Stephen, why don't you introduce yourself a little bit and talk about some of the stuff that you've worked on in the Dead Work Anthology.
My name is Stephen. I'm a comic illustrator, and I've got a few stories in here. I think I'm about 36 pages in here, and I'm pretty proud of every single one of them. I've done most of my work with Lyndon Radchenka, who I'm sure you'll hear from shortly. And I just love drawing comics and love some of the stuff I've seen in here. It's so cool. And I don't know, looking at the story, if you could order which ones I did first versus which ones I did last. And I love seeing my own progression through my pages. So I think Dead Work is a really good representation of my progression as an artist in the era that these stories come from. So.
And you already mentioned Lyndon Radchenka. So, Lyndon, why don't you talk a little bit about your contributions to Dead Work, which are a bit more diverse, given that you're both a writer and a letterer for a lot of these projects.
Hello, this is Lyndon. Again, the phantom that haunts this podcast, it feels like, most weeks. I am a writer and a letterer. I wrote 3 stories in this collection and lettered about half of them. So I got to work with everyone, I think, except for Justin Curry, because he worked with Gregory Kmichuk. But yes, I got to work with Stephen on a number of projects, and I got to work with Zach on one as the writer and a couple more as the letterer, and then of course with you, Jonathan, I did some lettering for your projects too.
Yeah, and let's talk about a couple of those real specifically. So I want to talk maybe first with you, Stephen, a little bit about our project that we did together, Dirk Dirksen versus the Demons from Mars, because this is something I'm pretty excited to have in here for a couple of reasons. One is just that it's the start. It's a short, self-contained story, so it's like an 8-page complete short comic. That we kind of, but it's an idea I've had kicking around for a long, long time, and have, we've got some kind of bigger plans for it, where when you're done some of the stuff that you're doing now, we're going to expand that into a full issue and, try to do some, get a series kind of going with it. So, Dead Work in that kind of comic in Dead Work, to me is pretty special because it's something a little more different than what I normally do. Like it's got a bit more of that comedy in it than I'm really known for. But like it's also got, I think, some really great work by you in there. So Stephen did all the art, of course, but it also kind of have brought him on as a co-creator and co-conspirator for the series. So we're kind of taking it forward and kind of developing it off of kind of my original concept a bit.
It's the first project I did that wasn't with Lyndon, and I'm just excited about like the world that's being built with it. Like the 8 pages, you get an idea of the characters and the villainous air about the background and their backgrounds of the characters. However, just through conversations Jonathan and I have had, like the fun we're going to have progressing that story and building that world. I think it's about to get like really weird and really funny, and I'm just glad it gets to go to print. Even in its short form right now. And I really love the art in it. It's exciting. It's cool.
Yeah, there's just something about print for me anyway. Maybe I'm just an old man at this point, but like, I mean, if you kickstart Dead Work, you can get a digital issue, of course, but what we're really trying to do is print a physical issue. That's kind of the ask, right? Is for printing costs. And for me, like, there's just something magic about having a print version of the thing. Like I've had the digital one sitting around on my hard drive for a while now, but there's just something about printing it that just feels better and different and special. And I'm just really excited to see your colors pop, especially too, because I think you did some really interesting line work on it, especially coming off of the stuff you did with Lyndon, which I still like that stuff, obviously, or I wouldn't have wanted to work with you, but it just has a different vibe. So like you were saying, like I could really see like the difference kind of from some of your as you kind of go throughout your progression as an artist there.
I would agree. Dirk just came off so well, and the colors, I felt very consistent with the colors, and I learned a lot about coloring at that point. And it's going to flourish into a great book, which we're finishing very shortly, actually, which is really cool.
Did you do any work with? I'm trying to remember if you worked with Lyndon or Stephen on the book. I want to say you worked with Lyndon. Did you work with Stephen inside the book, though?
Technically, yeah. I colored one of their. It's a funny story. I colored one of their pitches like the day before it was due. Stephen was still drawing stuff for the pitches. He was drawing pages. Lyndon was lettering them as we went, and I was coloring the pages. And we all kind of worked together in like a last-minute panic to get it done in time for the.
It was so
submission.
fun.
We were up till 4 in the morning.
I think it was like 3 or 4. Yeah.
It reminded me a lot of my college days for sure. We all did that a lot for projects, and I got a little taste of that with these guys again.
It was just great too, because we weren't even on voice. It was like I'd finish a page, I'd be like, page 3's up. Lyndon's like, lettering's done, and then Zach's like, I'm still flat in page 5. It was so great.
Yeah, no, it was a ton of fun.
The long form version of this story is that Jonathan, I know you spoke to Chris recently about the comic Hadel that you two did together for the Platform Comics contest, which the rules are that you're given a topic and you have to create a 4 to 8 page comic within the span of a week based on that topic. And Stephen and I like to do this challenge. This is our second year that we were trying it. And while you were working with Chris, Stephen and I were working on this piece. And for whatever reason, we were worried that we weren't going to hit the deadline on time. And so we to
speak to that. I normally book that week off to do platform, and I completely forgot to book the time off. So it was like, well, we'll see if I can get it done.
And sorry, I remember no, it's good. And I remember I don't want to say we forcibly pulled Zach in, but I'm sure he did more than he wanted to do to help us get this comic to the
If I remember right,
line.
I was in the middle of my own big deadline, and I was already up till 2 when I got asked, or 1 in the morning, early in the morning one day, and Lyndon was like, Zach, we need you to color this. It's due in 2 days, and we're not going to make it otherwise. And I was already up late for my own thing after working way too many hours, juggling all my different jobs, and I went, yeah, let's do it.
And it's no joke. I think the deadline to get the pages in was at 11 a.m. on a Thursday or something, and we were up until 4 a.m. that Thursday morning, Wednesday night, 4 or 4:30, trying to get everything done. Yeah, because no one wanted to wake up early to do the work. We all just were we were going to power through the night to finish it, so we didn't have to worry about squeaking it in at 10:55 in the morning.
Yeah, we didn't have to wake up rushed. That's for sure. So
no, it looked really good. I'm really happy with what we pulled off. It all turned out really well, considering.
One thing that always strikes me about kind of this project, what I think is kind of interesting about it, and how it has kind of developed, pretty organically over the the last kind of little while is although we didn't like have this project in our heads 5 years ago or anything, I think there's like a almost like a weird sort of organic way in which we've all kind of been separately sort of building towards a project like this, because so much of how this kind of group here has like this Dead Work collective, we call the kind of loose group of collaborators that are often working on one another's stuff, so much of like how that kind of community or that kind of group develops in kind of an art community is just people who are just doing things all the time and just willing to kind of just do it. They're good. They've got their skills. They've honed them, and now they have kind of this readiness, and they can kind of just pop in and do things. And there's like a readiness and a willingness that I think is, pretty. I think most people are pretty good about. I just find like that is the thing I think that often separates people, and it's hard for me to explain it when I'm kind of teaching classes. Like I'll teach writing classes, right? Or people ask me like how they break into this industry or that industry or whatever, and it's kind of a hard thing to answer because so much of it is about not actually trying to break into the industry, but actually it's just you're just doing things because you want to do them and you have a willingness to do them, even when maybe you shouldn't. You should just go back to sleep. But instead, you're going to get up and just ink this thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know, for an example, Zach, you and I seem to have this like parachuting in relationship when it comes to last minute comic deadlines, yeah. Where if you need, lettering done, you're just like, hey, can you do this? And it's just sort of this assumed thing. It feels like and I want to say this extends to a lot of our group, is this idea that like you help one another out when you need it because you know that they're going to help you out too when you need it.
And like we were talking about the story of me helping Lyndon and Steven there a couple months ago to make that anthology pitch happen. Last week, I had a deadline coming up, and I'm like, I'm not going to get this lettered in time. It's due tomorrow. Lyndon, please help. And he rattled off some lettered pages, and I really appreciated the save. And so it's nice to know that, yeah, I have a team of people who can help out last minute when I mismanage my time.
And I really think that relationship, like I said, is mutual amongst so many of us. And I think that is, like you said, Jonathan, one of those things that just sort of happens organically when you're doing things.
I think it can. I think it's certainly, like there's an organic quality to it. I think is a good way to put it, like you say. Like it just kind of happens organic when you're doing things. And that doesn't mean that you're always like available to do something. But even if you're not available, you might have the willingness. You know what I mean? Like if I right now called Gregory and said, I need this thing by tomorrow, like he might tell me to go fuck myself. That's not enough time, but he would want to do it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like there's a level at which like you kind of have to want to do this thing it's hard to explain sometimes when you talk to people who like, I don't know if you guys get this, like people come up to you in a booth or something. I get it, like people come up to me like after a talk or in a class or something, and like they say they want to do a thing, but they really don't.
I've got a story in that vein. I was at a con with my friend Peter Schakowsky years ago, and a guy came up and said, "How do I draw like you?" And Peter was like, "Oh, we'll ask my art friend who does art more serious than I do at the time." And this guy goes, "Okay, what do I do? I want to draw like you. I want to make comics. I'll do whatever it takes. What do I do?" And I said, "Well, just like practice every day, like 10 minutes. Find 10 minutes every day and draw something." I tried to undersell it because it's way more work than that. There's way more that goes into it. But I went, you know what? If you started doing that, you'd be off to a great start. And the guy goes, "Oh, I could never do that." And he walked away. And it was like comical. It felt like I was in like a cartoon. It was just like, oh, okay, I lied. It's harder than that. But if you can't handle doodling for 10 minutes most days, then yeah, no, you don't got what it takes.
Yeah, I think it sounds weird or harsh when people say that, but I don't mean it like, only some people have what it takes. I mean it but it kind of is that way on a level. But what I mean more is like some people have the perception that is harder than it is. And those people kind of need to hear the kind of thing you're saying. Like they need to hear like, yes, it is hard as you think to, make a go of it as an artist. Yes, it is a difficult, competitive, tough industry, but there is actually a base level where it's not that hard. You just have to be doing it. You can just pick up and start doing it. And if you just pick up and start doing it, and if you just keep doing it, which isn't an easy thing, it's so easy to quit that one of the hardest things is just not quitting. But only you can quit, like nobody can fire you. Like nobody can tell Steven, that you're not allowed to draw anymore. Right?
I mean, teachers tried back in grade school. Stop drawing on the margins of your stuff. And we didn't listen then, so.
Yeah, like in a weird way, the hardest thing, I think like arts is an industry where it's actually easier than it seems on one level. But then it's also harder than it seems. And there's like a class of people who are just confused and they need to, they need like the encouragement because they do have what it takes and they do have the drive. They're just confused. They think it's harder than it is. And they are kind of down on it themselves. But then there's this other group of people who's like, they're looking for a magic bullet. When in some ways the answer is not, there's no magic bullet. You just have to do it.
Well, I think there's like 3 layers, right? There's the want to do it, and there's a lot of people who want to do it. And then there's like the need to do it, where like you almost have that drive, but it's, I don't know, I've looked inward and it's like there's like this third layer that's this unsaid thing where you just do it. Like we talk about that Laws of Nature, where Zach Lyndon and I stayed up till like 3 a.m. and Zach did it at a drop of a hat. And like, not only did we not get paid to do that work, but we didn't become a finalist in that anthology, and it did not go into that anthology. So like, there was literally no tangible reward at the end. We just all were like, we have to do this. Like it just happened. And I think, yeah, like you can listen to people all day say, just do it, just do it, just do it, just do it. All you got to do is work every day. But I think there's this thing, I don't know what it is, that just makes you do it every day once you love it as much as you do,
I feel like it's this weird 3 level. I think I like your 3 levels idea, but I would kind of alter them slightly. Like, so I think there's that level at which, some people, there's like a want to do it. And a lot of people want to do it, like you say. And like wanting to do it is good, but it's not enough. And there's like that need to do it level, right? And like needing to do it has its benefits because, like you say, it gives you that drive. But there's also this bad side of needing to do it, right? Like there's like the neediness aspect of needing to do it, and like the sort of, well, if I like this, all the negativity that can draw around that need, and the insecurity that can collect. Well, what if I won't be able to do it? Comes into play, and like, what if no one will allow me to do it? What if nobody likes it? Like all that stuff starts to collect around the need, because if you need to do it, the barriers then become so much more dangerous and fearsome, right? And I think like there's a good and there's a bad to the need. There's like a good and a bad to the want. But I think like in a weird way, like you got to get down to that deeper level where you're just going to do it. Like you're just going to do it. And then like whether you want to or whether you need to is sort of starts to become irrelevant at a certain point. It's just that's what you're doing. And like, yeah, you want to win this platform comics, but if you don't, you'll just be, okay, well, what's next? What do we do with it now? Maybe we'll, send it to this other anthology. Maybe we can make our own anthology. It's, maybe we'll just start another one, like it's hard to explain to somebody who hasn't done a lot of stuff, but like there's a level you hit after you've done enough stuff where it's kind of happy and sad, but it like, every single thing you do kind of becomes less symbolic of what you do. And it's kind of like becomes a little less precious. And it's like almost like a sad moment because, it all gets just a little less precious. But I think it's like a necessary and important moment because, you realize eventually like, oh, if that doesn't work, I'll just do another one. and it kind of like, if nobody buys, this comic, I'll just make another comic. And like, I still love that comic. And I did it because I didn't do it to become rich. I didn't do it to make it. I didn't do it because I had a need to be recognized. You got to get past that stuff and be to like, I'm just going to do it. And then I'm going to do another one. And then I'm going to do another one, and I think when you get to that point, it's a lot of things open up for you, because there's just the neediness goes away, and people are just more willing to engage with you because you don't have that desperation in your voice anymore, even though like objectively you might be in dire straits. You still have like, you don't really have like that deep, if they don't recognize you, you'll just do something else anyway. It won't stop you.
Yeah.
Just to bring it more concretely back to that comic you were talking about, though, why don't you talk a bit more about what that comic is, the Law of Nature one, and sort of how that ties into some of your other projects?
Okay. Lyndon, do you want to take this?
The Law of Nature, sure, is a short comic, but it also contains some elements or exists in the world of another project that we're working on. So while none of the characters that are in this short have appeared in our other project at this point, it's sort of an offshoot, or not a spinoff isn't the right word, but it's a story that's going on somewhere else. And you'll be able to see sort of those two narratives, the narrative of this short and the narrative of our main story, kind of collide or cross over one another later in the main series, if / when we get to making those issues.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have anything to add, Stephen?
Yeah, I mean, I'll give a quick description of like what the story is too while we're at it. We like to, when we write our stories, we really like gray characters, and we like the reader to decide if they're good people or bad people. We find that to be really interesting. In this one, there really is like a good and an evil, but like how people go about doing what they're doing, you can interpret how you want, but it's effectively a quiet story of a cop out in the desert who is following a trail of clues, and it's brought him to this remote tavern, where he's looking for his next clue in finding this, we'll say, this cabal of drug trafficking in his region, and through a few shenanigans and scenarios in that bar. I don't want to reveal too much, but you learn a lot about what this cop really is, and what this bar really is. And I don't know how much I can reveal, but let's just say it has to do with werewolves and vampires. And I don't know how deep to go into
werewolves
this.
and vampires.
Yeah,
that's all you need to say.
It's werewolves and vampires that are very aware of each other's weaknesses. I think that's a good way to put it. And it makes for a really cool story. And when Lyndon talks about how it laces into our greater narrative of this book, this other book that we're working on, I can't wait to get to this part, because there's so much. Like when we designed this story, we were like sitting in a park near Lyndon's house, like jumping up and down on a picnic table and being like, oh, and this is what he does here, this is what he does here, and like, oh my god, and we could tie this in here, and it would be so cool if this character came in here. And I just love those moments, and I know over this short story in Dead Work, there's so much that we're going to be able to do, and you get a real taste of it in this short story. So
that is really worth talking about. That you guys also did is the Tomorrow's Escape. So one of my, I really like personally as a reader, I'm really interested in stories that have unusual narrative structures. And so to me, that story is really interesting. Why don't you talk a little bit about Tomorrow's Escape and kind of what it is and how that came about?
Yeah, Tomorrow's Escape is actually it was our first platform comics entry that we did. And we didn't know what the theme was going to be, but I had I remember very vividly, we were discussing like what kind of comics we wanted to make, knowing that we might have to change it when we got our theme whatsoever completely. And I had been watching like prison shows at the time and wanted to do like a jailbreak sort of story. And so it was very serendipitous. The day we got our topic, the sort of general guideline we were given was that we had to tell a story behind the quote was behind enemy lines. So we turned it into sort of a prisoner of war story who is trying to escape this camp and repeatedly getting captured. And the narrative structure is this. What, Stephen? What position would you say the guy interrogating him is?
I would say, I don't know what his military position would be, but like he would be the big wig in charge of the camp, right?
Mm-hmm.
He's the one who, paces the camp looking for the weak ones or the strong ones and tries to break them. So
yeah. So the narrative structure revolves around this conversation that this guy is having with this prisoner who keeps trying to escape. And as they're talking, you're seeing flashback episodes of the different sorts of attempts to get away that have been tried and failed. And that's why the story is called Tomorrow's Escape, because it's sort of a never-ending struggle to get away, but never giving up.
Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of metaphor in there for what we do in comics, where it's like and we were talking about this earlier, where it's you just keep trying regardless of what the result is going to be. You just keep trying, and eventually something good might happen, or you might get the shit beaten out of you. But it almost doesn't matter as long as your desire is there, and you can try to pull some stuff off. It's pretty cool, and I love this story too. Like I think this is maybe only the second, we'll say, IP that Lyndon and I did together, and like I got to again progress myself a little bit more. I played with lighting a lot in it, and I got to draw a lot of dynamic positions. And back then, I wasn't as good, or we'll say, or had as much knowledge on action and stuff. And I pulled off some panels that are still some of my favorite panels today. So it's a great little story.
Really, like you kind of hinted at this earlier, but I'm not sure if you were thinking about this at the time when you were writing it, Lyndon, or when you guys were co-developing it or not. But it does sort of operate almost like a allegory or a metaphor for being a creative person or trying to make it in a creative industry. They're just going to keep beating the shit out of you, but you got to keep just doing it anyway. Yeah, even if you're going nowhere.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm sure that that bled in from real life circumstances on some level. I think at the time I was working an office job and really not enjoying it. So making comics has always felt like, another escape.
Well, Zach, why don't we tie it up with that sentiment, but also maybe you can come in and talk to us a little bit again about what the Kickstarter is and how people can kick in.
Well, Zach, tell us about your comics too. You're in a bunch of these.
We can wrap things up.
That too.
I don't mind.
But wrap it up with all the do all that at once, Zach.
All right, it's a tall order, but I will do my best. Like I said earlier, I've got a couple little comics in here. A little Thread story, which Thread's my little Norse comic. So there's a 10-pager in there of Thread, and then I've got a bunch of little D&D origin stories of some characters written by friends like Lyndon and my buddy Josh. And they're little 4-page stories about D&D characters and their kind of backstories and how they came to be doing what they're doing. And any one of those, I think, that I did could be a jumping-off point for a book of those D&D books. They all feel like cool little characters and worlds that I like to see a glimpse into, but if somebody wanted to throw money at me, I would be very happy to make a full book of any of those characters because they're all very cool.
What were their names again?
We
For all
have
the stories?
Yeah, so we have Darmid the Barbarian, written by my friend Josh, and I believe he's played that character in D&D. Then there's we got John the Gambler, which is Lyndon's character that he played for a while, and then I've got two of my own, Bartholomew the Rogue, the Archaeologist. He doesn't see himself as a thief, but he's definitely a thief. And then Eldred. Eldred Everflame is like a firebending monk who I played for a year or two with my pals, and she's probably my favorite character I've ever played. And her comic, she's really cool. She sees voices of past users of this power she has called the Everflame every time she uses her fire powers. And she looks crazy because she's talking to fire as she's shooting it, which is not a good way to look sane. So yeah, fun, interesting characters with weird backstories. And
not to interrupt you, Zach, but I want to talk more about that character because I love that Eldred Everflame character, and I think that character I would buy a book of that character, and I would kickstart that character's graphic novel. So I'm not sure if you have a plan for that, but I really would like to see more of that particular character personally. Do you have like plans to expand? You mentioned you'd love to do this, you'd love to do that with some of the characters, but do you actually have? I know you're mainly working on Thrud right now, right? Correct.
And a book with
am
Lyndon.
I wrong about that?
And a book with
and a
Gregory.
book with Lyndon. Yes, right.
And a board game.
That's right. You are doing those two books at the same time. Yeah.
And my other day job.
So you're packed full of projects, but if you ever have the time for another one, that Eldritch Everflame is one that I'm really interested in. I would love character.
To. Currently, my plans. The reason these little 4-pagers are all in here is because they are dead work until I can find a way to do enough of them. If I hit a certain amount of these little 4-page stories, they're just so fun to do. I want to find some other guest artists and make some more of these, and put a little book of origins, and then. Yeah, if some of those characters were more of a hit than others, I would be super down to do a book. And Eldred is, again, I played as her for a couple of years in D&D, and I loved every minute of it, so it'd be fun to do a book of Eldred. And there's just such a cool character hook there with the voices and it was a twist on the Avatar state, if anybody's an Avatar fan. Aang, before his big battle, goes and consults his past lives to see how he should handle this problem. And I thought, what if all of his past lives were assholes instead of just some of them? Like one of them's this crazy, like for Eldred, one of them's a crazy like ex-mage warlord who burnt everybody alive, and one of them's like a paladin who is pious and annoying and righteous. The other one's a crazy barbarian who just loved destruction. And these are the voices, instead of like helpful, calm, sage advice from past monks, basically, it's crazy people talking to her and saying she's screwing up. Which I'm sure you can see some real life parallels to anxiety of just all these very unhelpful voices telling you just how you're screwing up at the moment, except also while you're shooting fire. So it's a fun take on anxiety basically, and I'd love to do more of that. Is the long answer of saying yes, I'd love to do more.
Your art is also popping in all these.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm really happy with how those are shaping up. Two-tone palettes.
You're also somebody.
Good panel flow. I'm really proud of what I put together for these.
You're also somebody who, visually you can really see doing a lot of different things in the book. I think I don't know how you feel about Lyndon. Like for me, I feel like as a writer, it's harder to see what I'm doing. It just isn't as visual, obviously. But also, I just think like progression as a writer is harder for an audience to notice. Particularly when you're a writer like me who doesn't really have a style and just sort of moves in and out of doing different types of things. Whereas like you guys have really developed distinct styles and you have a lot of variability and flexibility within their styles. But, I can look and see like what's Steven and what's Zach, right? And it's not hard to tell who's who. And I can really see, even just from one piece to the other, real development. So I think it's really interesting, and then but just kind of to go back to writing for a second, Zach, I think that you're becoming a much more interesting writer as like, that's something that I kind of like noticed when I was looking at Dead Work was like, I think like your writing has really improved. Like when I see you kind of, either just as you yourself doing the writing, or even just like from a storytelling perspective with your layouts. It just seems like there's a bit more. I just can see some real development happening in this particular book once I kind of stacked all that stuff up together and looked at it,
Well, thank you.
from one cover to the other. So I'm pretty interested. So to me, like the best reason to get, Dead Work, if I was going to pitch it to somebody who, doesn't know any of us, right, is I think like not only do you get introduced to some really interesting people doing these interesting things, but you're getting a sense of how they're really developing across a book and like across a number of projects. Because it's not just one thing that was on display here, right? There's a bunch of different projects, there's a bunch of different people collaborating in different ways, and because they're working with different people, you really do get to see how they adapt and how they kind of are growing as these collaborations are growing and developing themselves.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I can see the progression with everybody. Like if you look at even Chris's work, it's just cool to see the progression of his crazy monsters and weird design. They're getting weirder every time, and I don't want that to stop. I love his stuff.
And yeah, to go back to what you said, Jonathan, when it comes to writing, I think one of the I agree with you. I think it's harder to watch or to keep track of your own progress, and I think a significant part of that is because when it comes to comics, like the art style is so important that you find yourself as a writer, writing to match that style. Like you're not, you don't have your own. Like your growth as a writer is also tied to the artist that you're working with, because you're trying to make the writing be a cohesive whole with the art that it's going to be paired with.
Yeah, I think that often changes when writers become celebrities, and what they'll start doing is, like, as the writer becomes a bigger and bigger deal in the industry, what they'll start to emphasize the writer, and they'll start to match them up with just whoever's open.
Yeah.
And they'll put less thought into the art pairings, I find, kind of so weirdly, I think writers, like, as their career develops in comic, they often get worse. Not because they're becoming worse writers, but because the pairings are getting worse and they're getting more forced into pairings a lot of the time. So to me, like, what's most exciting about finding a new writer or a new artist is finding them kind of earlier in their career, where they've figured out how to do things well, but they're polished and they're professional in the work they're putting out, but they're kind of in the stage where the writer needs the artist more than the artist needs the writer, and therefore they have to do what you're saying, Lennon. The writer actually has to develop and adapt to the situation of the collaboration a bit more. And so I find, like, the writing that I find most exciting is the writing you get in a book like Dead Work, where you've got people who are pros, but, aren't like, pulling $1 million out of Marvel every week.
Yeah.
And therefore they have to really collaborate, and they neither of them has like the clout to knock the other one down. You know what I mean?
Yeah. You actually have to work together.
Yeah, and of course, we thankfully like working together as a sort of collective enough that we keep doing it, and now we got a book.
So Zach, what else do we need to know about the Dead Work Kickstarter?
Just that it can be found at deadwork.ca. You can follow along with more details than we can describe with our time left today. But yeah, lots of cool collabs between a bunch of really cool people, and we made weird, cool little worlds for you to peer into, and I'm really proud of every single comic in the book.
And thank you to everyone who has backed us so far.
Oh my God, yes.
We cannot thank you enough. I know by the time this airs, there will be hopefully a handful more people who have backed it. So to all of you in the future that are now hearing this, thank you for backing us so much. We can't do this. We can't print this book without your help.
Yeah, it's going to be such a cool book.
I'm the only one with the proof of it so far, and I got the satisfaction of flipping through all these pages that are now a tangible thing, and I can't wait for everybody else to get that too, but oh, it's a good feeling. It's the best feeling. It's why we do what we do.
Oh man, that's so cool.
Sorry to rub it in farther.
Well, thanks so much for talking to me, guys. Thank you for listening, and thanks for going to deadwork.ca, checking out the Kickstarter, and keep writing the wrong way.